Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1187, 1187, Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, before I get into the news of the day, normally we would do our voting on this video for Dumbass of the Week. But you know, we've been doing Dumbass of the Week now for about a year. It's pretty entertaining. I pretty much have enjoyed doing it. But I thought it's pretty much, you know, we're seeing pretty much the same names come up. It's getting kind of to be old hat. So I thought we might do something a little bit different in this video today. Instead of selecting a Dumbass of the Week, what I'd like to do is throw out the top 5 names right now of potential VP picks for Burisma Joe and get everyone's take on who they think that VP pick may be, or if you think it will be someone else. Now, as we know, Biden has been pretty much put into a box. He has no choice whatsoever, really, in who's going to be picked. In fact, he's not even going to be the guy making the decision. There'll be people around him making that decision for him. But I think we all understand that he absolutely 100% must choose a female VP. Must. If he doesn't, the outrage woke mob will massacre him as a result. So he has got to choose a female. He's already locked in. I think also that female is going to have to be a minority, black, Hispanic, or something. I think he's pretty well locked in to both a female and minority, probably black, most likely black, could be Hispanic, but most likely black, female VP. So I want to focus on the 5 leading black female Democrats that are supposedly the top 5 picks that are being considered by the people who control Biden for his VP. So I'm going to go through the names for you, and what I'd like you to do in the comments section, instead of pick a Dumbass of the Week, choose from this list of these 5 potential VP picks. Tell me which one you think it's going to be, or if you think it will be someone else, you can write in that name. So let me go through these top 5 that are out there right now. The first one is Karen Bass. Karen Bass, B-A-S-S. And she, of course, is a representative from California. Karen Bass from California. Then we have Val Demings, D-E-M-I-N-G-S. She is a rep from Florida in the House of Representatives. She was formerly the Orlando police chief before being elected to Congress. Val Demings from Florida. Next we have, of course, Susan Rice, who's never been in an elected position before. She was first appointed as secretary to the UN ambassador, and then she was appointed as national security advisor. So she's never held an elective office. She was appointed to her last 2 positions in the Obama administration, and that would be Susan Rice. Next we have Keisha Bottoms, B-O-T-T-O-M-S, Keisha Bottoms. She, of course, is the mayor of Atlanta. Then we have, of course, Kamala Harris, legs in the air Harris. And, of course, she is a senator from California. So which of those 5 do you think will be selected as Biden's VP? Do you think Karen Bass, B-A-S-S, Karen Bass? Do you think Val Demings? Do you think Susan Rice? Do you think Keisha Bottoms? Or Kamala Harris? Or do you think someone else? Be very interested to know what the consensus is. So if you would put the answer to that question in the comments section, I will tally them up and we will find out what the general consensus is here in the TowerGate comments section, the subs here or people just visiting for a video. And it should be noted that we're not too far out now. Apparently this decision is going to be made somewhere around the 1st or 2nd week of August. It certainly has to be made by the 2nd week of August because the convention is the 3rd week of August, and obviously they're going to have to name the VP before then. So I would think somewhere in the 1st week of August would be my guess, is when they're finally going to tell Biden who his VP is going to be. So there you go. Your choices are Karen Bass, Val Demings, Susan Rice, Keisha Bottoms or Legs in the Air Harris or someone else. Now, before I get into the main topic of today, which is based on a great article by Paul Sperry, I just want to kind of add another thing to what I was talking about yesterday when I made the point again with the new information that came out in the legal case over in London, Alpha Bank versus Christopher Steele, with Christopher Steele losing, and now he'll be paying approximately $45,000 to the two owners of Alpha Bank. And I was talking about all the things that the Right Reverend Clinton had done and laying out the case for why I think she is the mastermind of the coup plot. So I just want to condense that down very quickly and then add one other piece of information which will show, I think, 100% for sure, prove that it was a Clinton campaign plot. Not, obviously it was FBI, CIA, and all these other things going on, but the origins of it started with the Clinton campaign. It was essentially a political dirty tricks campaign. And I think that there was two elements to it. The first element was first to have a October surprise. The October surprise, the thing that you drop a week before the election at the end of October to take out your opponent. The Clintons do it at every election they run. They always have an October surprise. Most politicians do. So it was first intended to have the October surprise. But what's a little bit different about this is that the very fact that Trump challenged Hillary in the way that he did it, as we know from Christopher Steele's testimony, he was putting together information, evidence, that could be used by Hillary Clinton to challenge the results of the election in court if she lost. So you really have something extra going on here. And what that tells us is that even if Trump had lost the election, the Hillary Clinton administration would have pursued Trump on criminal charges. The same thing that we saw happen with the Mueller witch hunt was going to happen anyway. It was going to happen to Trump as a private citizen for challenging the Right Reverend Clinton's power and the way that he did it. So we know that the Clinton campaign activity to go after Trump and his campaign began really right around the end of March. And what is significant about that? Well, it's about the end of March that it became clear that Trump was going to be the nominee, that he was not going to be stopped. The only person who really had any shot at him at all at that point was Ted Cruz, and he really didn't have the majority of the people behind him. He had the neocon establishment behind him. But Trump had the voters with him. And I think it was very obvious to the Clinton campaign by the end of March, early April, that Trump was going to be the person she was going to be running against. And that is when all the stuff started happening. Keep in mind, we still do not know definitively who Halper, Downer, and Misfit were working for. But the FBI have all across the board said that none of these guys were working for them. Not at that time. Only after Operation Crossfire Hurricane, July 31st, 2016, does the FBI admit that Halper was working for them and that they had any contact with Downer, and they disavow having anything to do with Mifsud at all, at any time. Yet all three of these players were in action in late March, early April of 2016. Halper actually much before that, because he specifically had been put on the case of targeting Flynn. So we have all that going on. Okay, so we know that at the end of April is when the so-called alleged hack of the DNC occurred, by which time they had already begun working on a plan to get Trump, and they were going to use this Trump-Russia collusion. So the very fact that this incident happens at the DNC, which most of us believe was not a hack, but rather was an internal download from a disgruntled employee, most likely Seth Rich, not a hack at all, but the narrative was spun up that it was the Russians, and then shortly thereafter, practically in no time at all of a sudden Trump gets linked to WikiLeaks and the hack and the Russians. So Clearly, this was all coming out of the Clinton campaign. That's where it all started. That's where it all started. So they had a plan at that time, back in early April, to make the October surprise and the thing to turn the election to tar Trump as being an agent of Russia, working with WikiLeaks and the Russians to interfere in the elections or what have you. This was going to be the setup, the play for the October surprise, which was supposed to destroy Trump and carry the day for the rotten Reverend Clinton. So we have a couple of interesting things, and I mentioned one of them yesterday, that occurs. Now keep in mind, at that time, about the end of April, the rotten Reverend Clinton had a double-digit lead just in the early polls, showing, well, it looks like Trump's going to be the nominee, Hillary's going to be the nominee. What did the polls show a Trump-Clinton matchup looking like? And it had Clinton in double digits, beating Trump. But by the time we got to September, especially after the investigation into the rotten Reverend Clinton's email server, that she took a hit there, and some other things she was taking a hit on, and the fact that Trump was just out campaigning her. He was beating her to death in terms of outworking her. And he had drawn the race by the end of September. Trump was now, various polls showing him within striking distance, within 5 to 8 points of Hillary by the end of September. So that started making the Clinton campaign very nervous. But they had their October surprise ready and waiting to go. And the first hint of the October surprise was when the rotten Reverend Clinton dropped that "You're Putin's puppet" in the third debate. That would have been the first week of October. October 7th, I believe, was the date that occurred. And prior to that, back in July, Robbie Mook had gone out on TV and for the first time had floated this idea that Trump was colluding with Russia and WikiLeaks and had something to do with the hack of the DNC emails, and that there was some sort of a plot. So that's the first time we hear of it. It's coming directly from the Clinton campaign. And that's even before Operation Crossfire Hurricane started. But keep in mind, we learned from Christopher Steele and the lawsuit over in London that the rotten Reverend Clinton was aware of Christopher Steele, was putting together a dossier to dig up dirt on Trump very early on. Late spring, and the absolute latest was July the 5th, but it was most likely very early on in late spring, probably somewhere around late April, early May, when the whole plot began. Because we also learned that the first contact between Christopher Steele and Confusion GPS occurred in early May at Heathrow International Airport. And remember, Sussman, Hillary's lawyer, is working along with her other lawyer at the DNC, Mark Elias. Sussman is representing, from Perkins Coie, representing the Clinton campaign. Elias also representing the Clinton campaign and the DNC. Okay, so these two Perkins Coie lawyers are the ones that are really Hillary's point people. She is essentially instructing them on what to do, or they're collaborating with her on what to do. They're working for Hillary. And Sussman and Elias are both intimately involved with Christopher Steele's work and Confusion GPS. They're the ones that hired Confusion GPS. They're the ones that approved the hiring of Christopher Steele, and they're the ones that were essentially paying Christopher Steele from Hillary. So keep this in mind. So then what happens is we get pretty late in the game toward the end of September, and then the whole thing with the Wiener laptop blows up. And Comey and McCabe try to sit on that laptop. For 21 days they sat on that laptop, hoping they could sit on it till after the election. But then we had these investigators, detectives down in the Southern District of New York, who saw what was going on, and they raised hell. There was a couple of conference calls with Main Justice and the FBI. One of them got pretty ugly with Loretta Lynch. She threatened retaliation. But these detectives in the Southern District of New York saw a situation coming where they might be framed. They might be blamed for the fact that whatever's on the Wiener laptop would come out later, and someone would say, hey, that should have been brought up before the election, and would be blamed on these detectives in New York. and they were not going to be in that position. So they were suggesting, and they were putting pressure, saying if Comey or the main Justice FBI did not come out and disclose the fact that there were Clinton emails, State Department emails, on the Weiner laptop, that they were going to let it out. Whether they leaked it or made a public statement, they didn't say. But they forced Comey's hand and made him reopen that investigation, looking into the Weiner laptop. This drug Hillary back in because it was her State Department emails, and it was Huma Abedin's laptop that Weiner was using to solicit these underage girls. Carlos Danger. So that threw a wrench into the spokes, and it also allowed Trump to draw almost dead even with Clinton, with just a few weeks to go before the election. But the way that we know for 100% for sure that this entire plot was a Rotten Reverend creation, and it was all set up to become an October surprise to take out Trump and deliver her the victory, was because she did give us the October surprise. We did get the October surprise. We surely did. Because on October 31st, at 7:32 p.m., Halloween, October 31st, 2016, Halloween at 7:32 p.m., the Rotten Reverend Clinton sent out the following tweet. And keep in mind, this was not a tweet that Hillary composed herself. This was done by a professional media person, because the big headline of it, and it was in a box. There was a big headline. It was bold, double-sized, bold print that said, "It's time for Trump to answer serious questions about his ties to Moscow." And it included a link to the Slate article. So this was a professionally done tweet, not done by Hillary. And then below that, it says, 4 things you need to know about the Trump Organization's secret server to communicate with Russian Alpha Bank. And here's what's interesting about that line, Alpha Bank. The Rotten Reverend Clinton and her people, whoever composed this, got the name of Alpha Bank correctly spelled, A-L-F-A. Chrissy Steele, in his dossier and in his relating Alpha Bank to other people where they took notes or he made reference to, always misspelled it and spelled it A-L-P-H-A Bank, Alpha Bank. The Rotten Reverend Clinton gets the spelling correct in her tweet, where Christopher Steele and Glenn Simpson, when they describe Alpha Bank, they get the name wrong. Tells you that likely this information was coming from within the Clinton campaign. So in that line, 4 things you need to know about the Trump Organization's secret server to communicate with Russian Alpha Bank. Below that, it has the 4 things. Number 1, yes, Donald Trump has a secret server. Yes, Donald Trump. Number 2, it was set up to communicate privately with the Putin-tied Russian Alpha Bank. Number 3, when a reporter asked about it, they shut it down. Number 4, 1 week later, they created a new server with a different name for the same purpose. And then, of course, the link to the Slate article. So it's a professionally produced tweet that looks like an ad. And it was done at 7:32 p.m. What's extraordinary about that is that one of the internet researchers, it may have been not Undercover Huber, but one of the other ones, found that the original article did not even post till 7:31, which means that the Rotten Reverend Clinton posted this up exactly 1 minute after the original article, Slate article, goes live. That tells you that it was coordinated. Also, John Podesta had tweeted out the same similar type of thing with the link, but he did it an hour earlier, an hour before it posted up live. So we got the October surprise right there. This was supposed to be it. Clinton's October surprise was the buildup of all this Trump, Russia, and then on October 31st, a week before the vote, they're dropping this. This is supposed to tie Trump to Russia. This was supposed to do it. But the problem is it didn't have hardly any effect, because people were still talking about was the fact that Comey had to reopen the Clinton investigation And so that's going on. Now, a couple weeks after this, it took about 2 weeks, then they re-exonerated Hillary again. But at the very time when this was supposed to have the impact as the October surprise, at the very time it was supposed to be the big impact, the big October surprise to take out Trump, all everyone was talking about was Weiner's laptop and Hillary's emails. Secretary of State Clinton's emails, State Department emails, were on the Weiner laptop, which had previously belonged to Huma. So that was sucking all the oxygen out of the air, and this tweet in this attempt to push the Trump-Russia collusion really didn't get any traction. It just didn't stick. And that's why they were so furious at Comey. He botched the Rotten Reverend's October surprise. There you go. The entire plot was planned out. And we also learned something else from these court hearings over in London. When we talked about the fact that Steele was briefing media outlets at the same time he was working for the FBI, we also know from the testimony of Mark Elias of Perkins Coie, he admits to not only knowing that Steele was talking to the media while he was working for the FBI and the Clinton campaign, but the fact that Elias even admitted that he knew in advance of the meetings Steele was going to have with the media because he had been meeting with Glenn Simpson. And in fact, one of the meetings, Glenn Simpson and Christopher Steele both met together along with Sussman, and it was at that meeting is where Sussman told Christopher Steele about this Alpha Bank communication thing going on. So it was Hillary's lawyer, Michael Sussman, who gave Christopher Steele the fake news story of Trump's server and Alpha Bank. That fake news came from Hillary's lawyer to Christopher Steele, who gave it to the media, and then the Rotten Reverend turned around and tried to use it as her October surprise. It came from the Hillary Clinton campaign. The Trump server communicating with Alpha Bank came from within Hillary Clinton's campaign. Her lawyer was Steele's source for that. Sussman told it to Steele, and then he went and told it to General Counsel James Baker. And then he went to the intel community and told them as well. And then Steele went out and told all the media organizations, including Slate, who then wrote the article, which was all coordinated and planned, and Mook and Podesta and the Rotten Reverend Clinton knew all about it because they coordinated their media attack and their Twitter attack to align perfectly with the release of the article, with the exception of Podesta, who got there an hour early. There you go. Now let's talk about this article from Paul Sperry. As you know from the Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz report, he constantly refers in that report to an individual which is only described as the FBI Supervisory Intelligence Analyst, the FBI's top intelligence analyst. He was the supervisory analyst over all the FBI's analysts. And he comes up in the Horowitz report time after time after time. But his name is redacted from the Inspector General report. But now Paul Sperry is giving us his name and a lot of details. Let's go through them, shall we? His name is Brian Alton, A-U-T-N. Brian Alton, A-U-T-N. He is the Senior Supervisory Intelligence Analyst at the FBI. He is named in the Horowitz report as the person who failed to properly vet the Steele dossier before it was used to justify spying on the Trump campaign. Alton teaches a class on, get this, the ethics of spying at a small D.C. college called Patrick Henry College. He's been teaching there since 2010 on the ethics of spying. Horowitz told us in the IG report that Alton did not have any pains or heartburn over the accuracy of Steele's reports. that Alton did not see a need to dig into Steele's handler's case file to find out more about Steele. Alton wasn't concerned about Steele's anti-Trump bias. Alton wasn't concerned that Steele was working for the Clinton campaign. Horowitz report says that Alton made grossly inaccurate statements during his questioning. He lied, Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz. Now, Horowitz doesn't say whether Alton's actions were deliberate manipulation or rank incompetence. He leaves that up to us. I'm going to go with deliberate manipulation. Alton was involved in every major juncture in the FISA application process. Alton was assigned to the Crossfire Hurricane investigation from its opening in July of 2016, and he was involved in the investigations throughout the Mueller witch hunt deep into 2017. Alton played a key role in preparing the FISA applications. He helped prepare and review the final drafts. Alton assisted the case agents in providing information on Steele's reliability and his sources. Alton met with Steele and his subsource. He also met with Bruce Orr, and he processed the information that Orr was given or was fed from Glenn Simpson. Alton was involved in the investigation into Michael Flynn. Alton drafted the summary of the dossier that was used in the January 2017 ICA. The attachment where he described Steele as reliable. Alton is a Russian expert. He is also the one that coined the phrase crown material, referring to the so-called Steele dossier. Now, despite all this, he still failed to corroborate the dossier. Alton was the one who pushed the FISA application or FISA warrant on Page over the top. Remember, the first time they went for the FISA, it was turned down. So it was Alton who pushed it over the top by using the dossier. And specifically, the number 95 from the Christopher Steele dossier, which was the part where they talk about Carter Page meeting with a Russian oligarch and having this agreement that Page would get a certain percentage of ownership in a large Russian oil company if he would be part of this plot, which turned out to be bullshit. Alton made the decision not to tell the FISA court that Steele was working for the Clinton campaign. He told Horowitz that he felt that it was immaterial. Alton embellished Steele's reliability by saying he was a key investigator in the FIFA soccer scandal. He never mentioned to the FISA court that Steele's contributions were tossed in the trash can and were not used because they were deemed to be unproven and unreliable. Alton was told by Steele that his primary subsource was a boaster who may engage in some embellishment. Yet Alton failed to include this information in the FISA application. Alton was told by British intelligence that Steele exercised poor judgment and rarely produces info with real intel value. But, despite that, he left that out of the FISA application too. In January 2017, Alton was told by Steele's subsource that Steele's information, based on his information, was misstated or exaggerated. But Alton still allowed Steele's claims, based on this subsource, to make its way into the FISA application. Alton interviewed Steele and his partner Chris Burrows in London. Both of them told Alton that Trump was their main opponent and that they were fearful of a Trump presidency and how it could affect Britain. None of that was mentioned in the FISA application. Alton lied to Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz when he said he wasn't aware of the fact that some of Steele's reporting may have been influenced by Russian disinformation. Because there are documents that show that Alton was briefed on this fact on at least 2 occasions. Now, both Ron Johnson and Lindsey Graham have Alton on their list of people they want to talk to in their investigations, if that ever occurs. Alton was handpicked by Comey and McCabe to work on the Trump case. So there you go. That is the name of the person described in the Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz report as the Supervisory Intelligence Analyst, or the Senior Intelligence Analyst. He's described in the IG report by both of those terms. It's the same guy, Brian Alton, A-U-T-E-N. Needless to say, this guy couldn't have been that freaking incompetent about everything. At every single turn, this guy gets it wrong. He also had access to all that material exonerating Papadopoulos, Carter Page, and Michael Flynn. And he probably knew the Paul Manafort Black Ledger was bullshit as well. And he probably knew where that came from too. This guy is corrupt as the day is long. There you go, Mr. Horowitz. We now know who your boy is, Brian Alton. And Mr. Durham, I think you need to arrest this guy. They SWAT rated Roger Stone for a hell of a lot less. This guy needs to be SWAT rated. When you look at all this, at every single opportunity that came along, this guy somehow missed it. That's impossible. He's the most senior supervisory intelligence analyst at the FBI. He had all this information that was derogatory on Steele. He left every single bit of it out of the FISA application, while at the same time embellishing Steele's reputation, while at the same time leaving out all the exculpatory information about the people that he was supposed to be investigating. This guy was not just making errors. This guy just wasn't a little incompetent. This guy wasn't just a little careless. This guy was doing a hit job on the Trump campaign. He's a major part of the coup. This guy needs to be SWAT rated, locked up, castrated, stretched, and quartered, and hanged for treason.